Hey, Book Dragons, I am so glad that you've joined me today. Are you in a reading slump, or facing burnout, or feeling just plain bored with what you're reading? I've got some really good slump busters for you. Get your snacks, drinks if you need them, and let's sit down and talk about these books. Got my eyes on, we are ready to go. The first one I want to share with you is The Ice Dragon by George R. R. Martin. This is a really short, easy to read book about a girl and the ice dragon that she befriends. I think that you will absolutely love this book. It's kind of cozy and it's perfect for a little palate cleanser in between heavier books. So definitely check out The Ice Dragon by George R. R. Martin. The next book on this list is The Slow Regard of Silent Things by Patrick Rothfuss. Now, I know what you may have heard. This is a somewhat mixed bag for a lot of fans of Patrick Rothfuss, but it's one of my absolute favorites. It gave me Alice in Wonderland vibes because it's just a really whimsical book and you're following a girl named Ari as she goes throughout the underthing that she lives in and starts naming all of her belongings, and she has personal relationships with all the things that she has collected over the years. And it's a very different book, but sometimes what you need to break a slump is different, right? You need something unique, something you've never read before, something that's going to make you go, oh, I don't know what I just read, but I like it. That's this book. You don't really need to have read the Kingkiller Chronicles to enjoy this book, I don't think. You can, and it will enhance the reading experience for sure, but you don't have to have read it. Okay, let's move on from there. Now, let's say that you've just got done reading this massive tome of historical fiction, and you're just like, I need something fantastical now. I need something that's gonna be quick to read, and maybe it's got vampires or things like that in it. If that's you, you need to read Carmilla by Sheridan Le Fanu. This book, guys, predates Dracula. Dracula was partly inspired by this book. It's just a really unique look at vampire lore. It follows a female vampire and the little town that she's infesting, I guess we'll put it that way. It's such a great book. It's a really short read, and a lot of times what you need when you're looking for something to get out of that reading slump is something short. So a lot of the books on this list are short as well, so I'll just let you know that. This is a great read. I highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite books. I like it better than Dracula, which is saying a lot because I love Dracula, one of my favorite books I've ever read. So yes, pick up Carmilla. It's a fantastic book. All right, guys. Kind of along those lines. It's in the horror genre. It's another short book. Really great palate cleanser. If you're just looking for something different and to break you out of your comfort zone a little bit, I have a book for you. That would be The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor LaValle. The main character is Charles Thomas Tester. He's just a normal, everyday guy playing music on street corners, trying to raise money to take care of his ailing father. This is Harlem. This is around the 1940s, and he's black. And so racism is a thing, right? But he gets an invitation from a wealthy aristocrat to join his secret society, and it all goes downhill or uphill from there, depending on how you look at it. But anyway, it's a really, really great story. It's a retelling of the horror at Red Hook by H.P. Lovecraft, but it kind of turns it on its head because he's a black guy, and H.P. Lovecraft was quite racist. So it's a really, really great story. If you love Lovecraftian horror and you want to read something different, The Ballad of Black Tom is for you. Alright, so we're moving on next to another horror novel. Now, I didn't say these wouldn't be heavy books necessarily. I just said that they would be something different to bust you out of a slump. And this is another one of those books. That is The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker. This, guys, is the book that inspired the Hellraiser movies. The original Hellraiser movie was a carbon copy pretty much of this book. So if you've ever watched it and you want to read the book, this is it. It will keep you on the edge of your seat. It is perfect for busting out of a reading slump. I'd say it's very rereadable. Now, I have not reread it yet, but I do want to reread it. I definitely recommend this one to you. If you're kind of bored with what you've been reading lately, give The Hellbound Heart a try. So another book by Clive Barker, but this one isn't horror, and that would be The Thief of Always. This is kind of a middle grade, young adult portal fantasy, if you will. There's a young boy in the story who meets a mysterious and eccentric man who invites him to the world of Always for him to live and escape the cares of the world that he lives in. He enters into a world where everything is just exactly like he wants it. Everything appeals to him. It's all the fun stuff. It's all the fun holidays, and he just gets to experience everything exactly like he likes it. And then he begins to realize there's something a little fishy about that. It's a really great read, definitely unique and different. Clive Barker is a very unique author, so check out his stuff in general. But if you love cats, there's 3 just really adorable cats in this book, so check this one out. Alright guys, the next one I don't have a physical copy of, and that is Kings of the Wyld by Nicholas Ames. I absolutely love Kings of the Wyld, guys. I've talked about it before. This follows a ragtag band of aging mercenaries who need to go on one last quest to hopefully save the daughter of one of their troop members. And it's just a wild ride, guys. It's absolutely hilarious at times. Because, you know, these guys are old. They haven't been at it for years. They've been living the easy life for the last few years. They're not used to fighting and stuff like they used to, and so they're stumbling over themselves and getting into spats with each other, and one of them kind of seems like he might be going a little bit senile. It's great. It's just such a great, funny tale. Definitely something different. I'd say it's a great palate cleanser. You need to read Kings of the Wyld. Alright, so we are going to move on to Meddling Kids by Edgar Quintero. If you were a fan of Scooby-Doo growing up, or if you're still a fan of Scooby-Doo, I'm still a fan of Scooby-Doo. Come on, who's not a fan of Scooby-Doo? If you grew up watching Scooby-Doo, but now you're an adult, and you want to read something that's just a little bit more grown-up fare, this is definitely a great book. This takes the Scooby-Doo mysteries and blends it with Lovecraftian horror. It is a wild ride, guys. Now, this is not Scooby-Doo, but it is Scooby-Doo-esque. The group of kids in this story and their dog will 100% remind you of Scooby-Doo. They're all grown-ups now, and they've gotten on with their lives, and some of them haven't had the greatest lives at this point, and they find out about a criminal that they put away back when they were kids, who seems now to be on the rampage again. And it's not your typical guy dressed up as a monster fare. There may be real monsters lurking in this tale. And I'm just going to leave it there. Such a great read. It's one of my absolute favorite books of all time. And so there we go. Hey guys, I'd like to take a minute here to shout out my awesome supporters on Patreon. And if you would like to support me on Patreon, you can find a link in the description to do so. There's lots of great perks like early releases of my videos, and you get to pick books for me to read every quarter. So if you're interested, check the link below, and let's get back to the content. So let's talk about Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I'm sure you are not shocked that I have this book on here. This is cozy fantasy at its best. Pretty much the original cozy fantasy. And I absolutely love this book, guys. You're just following a former mercenary who's started a coffee and pastry shop and bringing the community in and meeting new friends, and very low stakes. There are some stakes, but it's low stakes. It's a great read, and I want to read the other books in the series. He's got a new one coming out, and of course there's a prequel to this book called Bookshops and Bone Dust, which I have not read yet, so I plan to read more, but Legends and Lattes, in my opinion, is a classic. And sometimes to bust out of those reading slumps, you just need something cozy. Alright, so we're going to move on to The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. You guys know I love this book. I won't talk a whole lot about it because I could go on, but it follows Linus Baker, who is a caseworker for the Department of Magical Children, and he goes to a very peculiar house where some of these magical children reside, and his life has changed forever. That's all I'm going to say. Read the book. It's great. So here's a little bit different one, and when you're looking for a palate cleanser, different is good. Keep that in mind. Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. It's about a man exploring an infinite house full of labyrinths, and each room is filled with statues, and the house is in the middle of an ocean, and so sometimes those rooms are flooding, and it's a small cast of characters, and the characters are just really quirky and unique. It's a fun book, guys. I wasn't sure how I felt about it after I first read it. I was like, man, what did I just read? But in a good way, and it started to grow on me as I thought more about it, and I really want to reread it now. It's a great book. I definitely recommend reading Piranesi if you're looking for something just totally out of left field. Okay, guys, so let's move on to a classic fantasy, and that would be The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. I absolutely love The Hobbit. I've read it 4 times at this point. The last time I read it with the audiobook, and it was fantastic. And this is totally an easy read. It's not necessarily short, it's a fairly good-sized book, but it's an easy read. You can read it in the matter of a few days if you really set down to it. There's an awesome dragon in the book, and lots of adventures, lots of laughter. It's just so great. I love The Hobbit. If you have not read it yet, you really need to so that you can see what I'm talking about. So we're going to move on to some series now. And we're going to start with Sherlock Holmes. And the thing I love about Sherlock Holmes is every story in the collection of Sherlock Holmes, even the longer novels, are really easy reads. They're quick to read. You can pick up this book and flip to a different mystery that you want to read, and it'll take you a day, maybe, at the most 2. And when I say novels, there are some novels in here that Conan Doyle wrote, but his novels are probably what we would call a novella. They're not very long, so I love the Sherlock Holmes stories. They're just so great. I love the character of Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson. And there's just something about these that are cozy. They give you those nostalgic vibes. And if you like mysteries, there's no reason why you shouldn't be picking up Sherlock Holmes if you're looking for something to bust out of your slump. Okay? All right, so the next series I want to talk about is the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. Guys, the Dresden Files are great palate cleansers. Those books are quick reads. Even the more recent Dresden books that are getting a little bit more involved and starting to kind of continue after each other, they're still really easy and quick reads. And they're action-packed, they're paced really well. It's perfect if you're in a reading slump. Especially the earlier books, because the series really starts out as a Monster of the Week type thing, kind of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or something like that. And it is really a fantastic way to cleanse your palate after something longer and more heavy. That's what I often use the Dresden Files books for when I was still reading through the series. When I was feeling bogged down with some of the stuff I was reading, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go to a Dresden book next. It was perfect. All right, so we're gonna move on to Agatha Christie. And yes, guys, I absolutely love Agatha Christie. I would recommend any of her books as great palate cleansers. All of her books fit the bill. Great cozy mysteries. They're all pretty short books. And some of my favorites have been The Murder on the Orient Express, Death on the Nile, Mysterious Affair at Styles, The Mirror Cracked. I mean, there's so many great Agatha Christie novels. If you're looking for a series within Agatha Christie, you can get into the Tommy and Tuppence novels. It's a 5-book series. It's just so great. Anything by Agatha Christie is a great slump buster. And along the lines of cozy mysteries, I would give you Patricia Meredith. She is a self-published mystery writer, and she writes historical mysteries, and they're also cozy mysteries. They're just so great. She reminds me a lot of Agatha Christie in many ways. And I've read 2 of her books so far, Butcher Baker Candlestick Taker and Death of a Christmas Tree Salesman. Both are really great reads. There's some great laughs in Death of a Christmas Tree Salesman especially, and I plan to read everything by Patricia Meredith at some point, so I highly recommend checking her books out if you're kind of bored and you just want something different and you like mysteries. It's a great pick. All right, so how about some sci-fi thrillers? I give you the books of Blake Crouch. So far, I have read Dark Matter, Recursion, and recently I read Upgrade. All 3 of these books are fantastic reads, in my personal opinion. Each of these books took me at most 4 days to read. Probably less than that. They are super fast, really engaging, fast-paced, edge of your seat, and I promise you will thank me for recommending Blake Crouch to you. Kind of along the lines of a thriller, I'm going to give you Dan Brown, specifically the Robert Langdon series. I have not read any of his books outside of the character of Robert Langdon. But if you're looking for a fast-paced thriller that is centered around ancient history, archaeology, and the humanities, I definitely think that Dan Brown's Robert Langdon series is going to be for you. The most famous one is the Da Vinci Code, because that's the one that got all the hype and scuttlebutt when it first was released. And it was a great, great book, guys, but all of the Robert Langdon books are fantastic. There hasn't been one that I haven't liked. Some I've liked better than others, but I'm a huge fan of Dan Brown, and he's great for cleansing the palate. And guys, that's the end of my list. I think I've touched on a lot of books, and I've taken up a lot of your time. Let me know in the comments below what some of your go-to books are when you are in a reading slump or you're just bored. Let me know what some of those are, what you would recommend. So until next time, guys, make sure that you read more books. And if you want to check out some more of my videos, check out these cards at the end here.